The Isle of Dogs lies in the Thames, just off the Millwall Docks area. It's said that Edward III used it for kenneling his dogs while he was hunting across the river at Greenwich, hence the origin of the name. Like some of the distressed areas, morale is low, and the islanders' main complaint is the lack of social amenities. They allege they're neglected by the Tower Hamlets Council and the GLC in matters of housing, roads, schools and transport.
We're sick and tired of having to be put back, talking about plans. We've seen plan after plan after plan. Johnny's been up on demonstrations, we've been up on demonstrations, deputations, written letters, nothing's happened. We shut the island off last Sunday and everything's happened. And it's not going to stop now.
The 11,000 islanders' last remaining link with the rest of the kingdom would appear to be one road and 2 swing bridges which connect them to the mainland.
This business of a small island declaring independence was almost like a passport to Pimlico idea, you know. But we thought that whilst the newspapers was playing on that part, we could get our point across, and that's what we did.
A trade unionist in the docks turned local politician, Ted Johns is a link between the past and the present. His past is steeped in the history of the East End.
Because of the devastation of the war, some areas like Bow and parts of Bethnal Green absolutely just fell apart. Communities had gone. I mean, the Isle of Dogs, in fact, there was only 7,000 people living on the Isle of Dogs then. I mean, 1945 was also a fresh start for the community. There was a lot of optimism, and I mean, work was beginning to pick up again. The river was absolutely jam-packed with vessels.
For a brief moment, the people of post-war Poplar could hope to enjoy a rebuilt and rejuvenated community.
There was a lot of rebuilding going on. The communities were beginning to build up, and at that time, of course, it was the rebuilding in Poplar, just up off the island. There was the Lansbury estate. It was a very well-designed estate, and it was the kind of thing that people could see was going to be hopefully the new redevelopment for the future. This rapidly fell apart in the late 50s and early 60s. That's when they built the big GLC estates, the Semuda estate and the Barkentine estate, which were models of the new wave. These were the high-rise buildings. These were the blocks where people were crammed in, where people said, this is not what we expected. The price we paid for an indoor bathroom is too great. These planners built these estates and neglected to build schools, which these kids would go to. They had to close the secondary school, the one secondary school we had on the Isle of Dogs. They closed that down and they said, we'll reopen it as a primary school. So primary school children would go there. And that meant that we had about 1,100 children, secondary school children, going off the island every day to school. And London Transport hadn't laid on extra buses for them.
You was knocking your head against and people wasn't listening to the obvious. If you step back and think about it, with so many people on the island with young children coming up to school, you know, these secondary school age, it didn't make, you know, it made no sense at all not to have a secondary school on the island.
There was the beginning then of local protests And this was based, I suppose, on the old popularism of the area, of the old popular tradition, of the old George Lansbury and the old councillors who had gone to prison in 1923 rather than pay the exorbitant rates. Like Nellie Cressel, who had actually gone to prison when she was nine months pregnant, in fact, in the old Poplar Council. She was still on Poplar Council.
This island is more like a country village. You know, everybody helps one another and everybody seems to know one another's business, and I think that's one of the reasons it's not changed such a lot. And there's still a great many island people still living here. They won't go anywhere else to live.
In 1965, there was a creation then of the new Tower Hamlets, the amalgamation of Stepney, Poplar and Bethnal Green councils into one Tower Hamlets. The old Stepney Council, they used to call it laughingly the Sullivan's Borough Council because the Sullivan family practically run the council. Poplar Council was an old Christian socialist council in the sense where there was no drinks in the mayor's parlour, you know, it was very sort of straight-laced. And Bethnal Green was the co-op party, so it was fairly sort of, you know, weak-kneed. I was elected onto the council, onto the Tower Hamlets Council, as a Labour councillor. It was shambolic, literally it was shambolic. There was these three former boroughs who were fighting like hell to gain control. And the first meeting I went to, in fact, was I walked into the meeting and the chief whip said to me from Poplar, said, "We're all walking out of here, Ted." He said, all the Poplar group, we're walking out because we're not going to have all this jiggery-pokery going on with these Stepney councillors. What was actually going on was the fact that Stepney Council was rigging the votes. They were literally rigging the votes. They'd gone round and they had lists, and the leader of the council, John Orwell, as I was the only Poplar councillor left sitting in the room, he came over to me and he said, "Oh, you know, Ted," he said, "I'm a socialist, of course," he said. So I said, "Well, I wouldn't expect you to be anything else." But at that time, we'd been campaigning on the island for a very long time to get a swimming bars rebuilt from the war, and he must have known that. So, and he said to me, "Would you like to be chairman of the Bars Committee?" I said, "No, I wouldn't." I said, "Because I'm not going to become chairman of the Bars Committee and vote for all your people."
Poplar included the Isle of Dogs, extending northwards almost to Stratford. It was uniquely associated with the docks and with radical working class protest. In 1956, there were 79,000 dockers in Britain, but by 1970 there were just 44,000. Containerisation of the ports had decimated jobs in the industry, despite fierce trade union and community resistance. Tower Hamlets, on the other hand, has always been a forced marriage of three areas with a resounding clash of interests and culture.
I would always try to put the island's case, the Isle of Dogs, forward. And of course I was always outvoted because there was only me and there was the other councillor at that time was a guy called Bill Wilson, who'd been a teleclerk in the docks. So there was only us two, and so when we ever put up any resolutions, we was always outvoted because everybody said, "Oh, it's a bloody island again," you know, "Oh Christ," you know, always arguing for something. Because we did, we was always pushing the boat further and further and further. So we had you know quite a tough time. Eventually, I actually built up around me, I suppose, probably something like 14 or 16 dissident Labour people, not necessarily, you know, from various parts of the borough, who actually would support me and would vote with me against the leadership. Eventually, I mean, this becomes so pressing that I broke with the Labour group and spent the rest of my time as independent Labour.
The first development of the new Docklands was St Catherine's Dock, and it was to be a pilot scheme for all future development in the area.
The deal with St Catherine's Dock, of course, was long and involved. We were brought in really relatively at the end of it. The rest of the councillors, it was mostly the leadership that was doing all the negotiating. But what they did this deal. First of all, there was the hotel was sold, the land for the hotel was sold, and then the quantity of social housing was actually reduced, and it was pushed into a corner almost, and all the rest were all these upmarket houses, you know, flats and all that. And Tower Hamlets Council, the leadership, actually, surprisingly enough, they actually agreed with it. Well, we'd had these meetings with the council officers and the council leadership, and we said, look, this is not right. We were supposed to have more social housing along there. It was supposed to be to rehouse people from Wapping and places like that. Eventually, as I say, when the vote came, 14 of us, we voted against it, and we were defeated, of course, because the council had a tight grip. By March 1970, we'd actually done everything. We'd marched, we'd been on demonstrations, everything. And we were sitting in my flat, in fact, one day, one evening. It was 1 o'clock in the morning. And I was sitting with a few community leaders, and one of them who was a waterman, in fact, Johnny Westfallen, he said to me, come on, Ted, he said, you're the ideas man. He said, what are we going to do? He said, make these people listen. So I said, well, the one thing we can do, because of the shape of the island docks, I said, we can shut the island off.
It's a man-made island, or was a man-made island when the two bridges was cut into the thing, so for years it was a man-made island, and it got cut off quite a lot. I mean, if the bridges went up, you had a delay. Good excuse when you went to school and said you got a bridger, or if you was late for work, you just said you got a bridger. Basically, it made you late.
So we decided, in fact, we would close it. We would shut the island down on the 1st of March, and we had to plan it carefully because the police station that was on the island then, it was only a small police station, and we knew that the police used to send down a Black Mariah from Limehouse. They used to pick up the police on the island, drive them off to Limehouse to sort of, get them signed out and everything, and then fetch the new crew back to the station. We knew that happened at 2 o'clock. So we said, as the Black Mariah went off the island with the police, we actually followed them up, and then we blockaded the bridge, we blockaded the road outside, and we shut the island off. We done that because we knew the police wouldn't get behind us. For 10 days, I was the president of an independent republic of the Isle of Dogs. There were television crews coming down from all over the world. I mean, they really thought it was a revolution.
We shall not be moved. Up the rebels.
Any of you ladies, do you support what Mr. Johns is doing?
I do.
You do?
I do as well. And I don't even live on the island, but I do support
Oh, but do you live on the island, love? Turn this way. Do you live on the island?
Yeah.
Do you support Mr. Johns?
I do,
What
yeah,
do
and
you think
I will.
is
What don't you like about it?
No buses, not enough shops, schools. They've got empty schools and all the children coming in here. There's not enough.
And the old age pensions all have to go on the
That's it.
buses to get their shopping. I mean,
You've got to go to a market.
It's too expensive.
We've not got no decent chemist.
No emergency facilities on the island.
No laundry service, nothing.
One night we went up to town, Downing Street, to deliver an ultimatum to the Prime Minister, and some guy who lived on the Bermuda estate, he used to drive his boss around in an Austin, big Austin it was. So he said, I'll tell you what, he said, I'll borrow a car. So we went up that night with it. So Johnny Westfallen said, well, we've got to have a flag. So I said, well, okay. So I invented a flag. I took one of the the kids' cot, and I painted a flag on this thing, and we stuck it on the front of the car, and we drove up to 10 Downing Street. And the funny thing, as we was turning into 10 Downing Street, the police superintendent saluted us. He thought we was diplomats of some kind. It was a group of watermen, dockers, and postmen, and bits and pieces. A bus conductor who was delivering an ultimatum to the Prime Minister.
Hello, Mr. Johns, there's a bunch of women downstairs and other tenants who want to speak to you, want to know what it is you're trying to do and why they haven't been told more about it.
Well, they've only if they care to, a couple of them care to come up here and sit down and chat. Sure, they can. I'm quite prepared to do it.
If I bring two up, you'll talk to them.
Sure,
will you?
Will. Yeah, sure.
Now, Mr. Johns says that if you'd like to go and speak to him, he's quite welcome to see you upstairs.
Definitely not. No, if he wants us, let him come down to us, and we will talk to him then. But we're not going up there.
All right, I'll put that to him.
Right, thank you very much.
They say since you've taken this decision on their behalf, you should really go down and talk to them. Now, can I ask you once again, will you? Yes, was there a democratic vote of any kind?
Yes, well, yes, certainly. Certainly it was.
Well, how was it arranged?
Well, as I said right at the beginning, the committees of the tenants' associations on the island, they're the people really that are the powerhouse of this, and they all come together, and it was their decision.
Do you think there's any sense in his plan?
No, we don't.
And who did they affect when they had the hold-up? When they stopped the bridges? They only stopped the islanders. My husband went to work. He couldn't get home and have his meal.
You wouldn't say that everything is all right on the island, though, would you?
Everything is all right, all by the schools and the buses. That's all we're grumbling about.
Only 8 hours after independence, the angry nation was signing petitions and calling for help from Bob Searle, agent of Ian Mercado, who represents Poplar.
With the way people are feeling now, it may well come to blows between the various factions. I think this is a real possibility.
So you don't support what Mr.
No,
Johns is doing?
I don't. It's a load of old rubbish. He's made us the laughing stock of the country.
I don't think they're laughing at us, I think they're laughing with us. Whilst they're doing that, some people are also listening. And when they listen, then they begin to act. And bumbledom and the efficiency and bureaucracy, they can't stand people laughing. And I think that we're going to overcome them this way.
What pressure can your council, Tower Hamlets, put on, say, the GLC to get a move on and get something done?
Not only what pressure can we do, but we've already done in a number of cases.
But can you tell the people now that they are going to get more buses, better roads and everything else that they're campaigning for?
As far as the bus service is concerned, 2 of my colleagues are meeting with the town clerk. They're meeting the new body in order to discuss the question of public transport in the borough with particular reference to the island and to Wapping.
The people who live on the Isle of Dogs have every reason to feel affection for Tower Hamlets. Only tomorrow, the council are going to reveal a plan for development in the area which should answer all the points of criticism raised by Mr. Johns. This makes him a bit late in the day and only goes to show that revolution, rather like comedy, is a matter of timing.
It was a spat to catch a mackerel, basically. The Times and the Telegraph and the Guardian and that was doing leader articles about, what's happening in Docklands. What about democracy in Docklands? That they was asking the real questions, but at the same time as they were saying, yes, it's a bit of a joke.
That actually probably lasted a lot longer than the actual physical event of stopping the traffic in the first place, because it just rolled on. And it done the effect of what we wanted to do. It brought the island to the notice of the local council and the government, basically, but the government pushed it back to the local council, and then the London County Council, who've done the schools, it pushed it into their arena because the main catalyst, as I say, was the school.
we decided that we would take our calls to the Greater London Council. So what we'd done, we had a barge which we'd converted to a youth barge, which had plenty of room on it. And we come up the river on the barge, some of us, and the barge moored just in the river there. We simply was playing loud music and, you know, making our case over our loudspeakers. But the main point was we had lots of people coming landside, and they got into the County Hall building, and we had actually captured County Hall. We was here for about 4 hours, I suppose, in the course of which time Horace Cutler, who was then the leader of the GLC, he went down the basement, in fact, I suppose to try and escape the crowds, and locked the doors behind him. What he didn't realise was that some of us was already down in the basement, so we had him trapped. We'd made our point, I think, because within a few days, the leader of the GLC contacted me by telephone and said they would like to meet us and talk about our problems. This was the building of George Green School, which that was the point we were making. Which they agreed to, in fact, they agreed to, and it's now here. George Green School exists now on the Isle of Dogs. They built that. We wanted improvements to the bus services, we got that, and we wanted a better deal for housing. Well, we didn't get that because the GLC reneged on us. The Tories reneged.
We ended up, we got the school. Actually, we need another one at the moment, but I mean, we got the school on the island, secondary school. We've also got the mud shooter farm, Park and Farm, which was a subcommittee of the association. Because it was quite active, it split up and formed the Park and Farm. These community centres come from the association of our communities by giving something into the area, so it had a knock-on effect.
Attention was then drawn to the Isle of Dogs. Attention was focused on the Isle of Dogs. People had heard about the Isle of Dogs, and so they began to talk about, well, we need to do things in Docklands. We need to do something about Docklands. What we didn't know at that time, of course, was that it was the Tories that had the ideas. We had Horace Cutler, Geoffrey Howe, and various people like that who were leaders of the Tory party. They actually met in a pub on the Isle of Dogs to decide what would happen about Docklands. I mean, they wasn't interested in us. They were interested in how quick they could make money out of Docklands. And one of their ideas was to have a free port in the Docklands. In addition, as I said, with the Port of London Authority making all these plans about what should happen with the docks, they wasn't interested in docks either. They were interested in the land that the docks was on, because when they had sold St Catherine's docks to the GLC, it was £3 million, and then the GLC then immediately sold a small part of the dock for £8 million to a hotel group. The Port of London Authority then realised that they were sitting on a gold mine, basically.
When you do sell off some land, how do you decide what sort of price you're going to ask for it?
Well, this is a matter for negotiation. But in addition to looking after our work people and our port users, you must remember we have our stockholders to look after as well. And we have to develop the port downriver still further, and it costs a lot of money. So we must be looking for realistic prices for this huge area of land, which surely near the City of London must have substantial value.
They decided what they would do, they would set up the London Docklands Development Corporation. It was a quango, non-elected, not answerable to anybody.
The price was loss of local control. The LDDC had all the powers of a local or central government department, but none of its responsibilities.
Really, the LDDC, I always used to argue, was despite all the trappings of government, so-called government legislation and everything, they were really just a bunch of estate agents whose job was to marshal as much public land as they could and then flog it off to the highest bidder. That was the sole purpose in life.
For people on the Isle of Dogs, the most serious impact was to be felt in housing. As a planning authority, The LDDC had compulsory purchase powers, but it was not a housing authority. So it had the power to displace people, but no power to rehouse them.
Because of the development that was going on around, the community itself was changing. It was changing from an exclusively working class community to a community that brought in a number of middle class people.
Where are you living at the moment and what made you move?
Well, I live in Bloomsbury. I moved because I wanted a house rather than a flat.
And you?
I'm living in Hampstead at the moment, and I like the idea of living down here beside the river.
What sort of advantages has that got?
I think in location it's conveniently central to the city and the West End, and I think there's going to be a very interesting atmosphere down here in due course.
What sort of atmosphere?
Well, I think they're developing the whole of the area, and it's going to change into a nice modern idea of a central area to live in town. Many of the people that come in and bought these big fancy houses, they wasn't interested in the Isle of Dogs. They didn't even care where, most of them didn't even know they was living in the Isle of Dogs. All they could see was the River Thames outside their window. We're talking now of 17 years on of the LDDC, the London Docklands Development Corporation, who spent public money at the rate of £11 million a week, every week, week in, week out, for 17 years, £11 million a week. And at the end of that time, what they produced was a whole clutch of developments which were bricks and mortar, but nothing for people. And so unemployment in the area, in this area, is higher now than in fact when the LDDC started in 1980.
I did say to the LDDC when they was here about building all this new Jerusalem, so to speak, down here, their idea was to build in the middle of the dock area, high, and come down low to the previous, to the rest of the Isle of Dogs. If you look at it now, it's a joke. And if you look at the plans, it's a wonder the bloody place don't sink. It's just unbelievable. And yet, we still only got that one school, secondary, that we fought for all them years ago. There's one medical centre that we managed to get, but it's, well, and the GPs, and you try to get on, you know, it's just overwhelmed.
You should never give up. You should never, ever give up. With all the upheaval that's gone on the Isle of Dogs, and the changes in the population and everything, that you still need to have that consistency. You still need to have that thread of argument. You still need to have that thread of resistance. These businessmen and all these that people say, oh, they're very smart. They're not smart. They're not smart. Well, they're out to make a bob, and so you can easily outflank them. There's no difference in arguing the toss with them as arguing the toss with your boss when you was a shop steward, for instance, that you had to argue your corner, and you've got to outflank them. And once you can get that going, once you can get a community informed, an informed community that is prepared to fight back all the time. Now they may not phrase it in the same words as I do, but they'll say it in one or two words. You know, they'll say, you know, no, this is our island. You know, and behind that means everything.